We should now, though, turn to Father Daryold Corbiere Winkler. Father Winkler is an Ojibway Catholic priest from Chiging First Nation, joins us now from Ottawa. Father, it's good and important to see you. I am aware that we're not having an academic conversation here about someone. We're talking about someone who you knew and had a connection with, and so I'm sorry that you have to talk like this on this day, and I'm also curious what's been going through your heart and mind.
Well, we have known that his health was very fragile for several weeks now, maybe months. And but nevertheless, it's still always a shock to hear about someone's death, and very sad for me and as well as people all around the world. It's still shock.
Sure.
I think we're grieving his loss. Yeah.
I'm curious what he meant to you personally, because you're in an interesting position. You're a priest. You're also an Indigenous person. I think you come at this conversation from so many different perspectives, and I'm curious what he meant.
So I think I was engaged in the spirituality and the talks of Pope Francis from the beginning. I could tell that he was someone that I would really admire, and his spirituality, his presence, his concerns for the marginalized and the poor, and having come from a family, of community of people who have been marginalized and poor for many centuries, this was an attraction to me. But he was more than that he finally came. I was so afraid that we would not hear the Pope in Canada. There seemed to be so much resistance to having him come here and to make his apology. So when he came, it was really an exciting and historic occasion. And for Native people, this was such an important part because it was part of the calls to action, as we all know. And it took several years for it to be fulfilled. But when he came, I think it was a real celebration for many Indigenous people.
I certainly remember, sir, that moment of seeing him in his wheelchair, going through the cemetery, and the silence, at that time. The pictures certainly were haunting. I feel like the weather felt haunting. It was so quiet, and that apology. My impression from being there is that there was an existential exhaustion on the part of the people who were there and who were listening to that apology. He came, he apologized, and he left. And what impact do you think that moment had on you and on those people who so desperately needed to hear that apology?
Well, there were members of my family who were involved in the residential school system and in the Indian school system in general. So my mother was a student in the Indian day schools. They were no picnics either. But I have relatives aunts and uncles who were in the residential school system. And so when he came to apologize, it was like he was apologizing to them too. It was a direct apology to the members of my family who, and I can be quite honest and say there was suffering in those schools.
Yes.
There was lots of pain. And they never talked about all those wonderful days when we were in the residential school. That I never heard that. And but I did hear.
Was there a moment during that visit in 2022? I mean, I just referenced, and I say this strictly as an outsider and an observer, that for me, watching his presence in the cemetery was astonishing. And pretty serious. Was there a moment for you that stood out or touched you in a lasting way?
Of course, the silence that you referred to for me is reverence. There was something sacred happening at that moment. That the Pope loved to talk about encounters, having encounters between two people or two nations coming together. And as a result of the encounter, there was transformation. Something transformational happens when we have an encounter. And I believe what we were witnessing there at Masquatchis was this kind of an encounter, reverent, a moment for opportunity for something healing to happen and some understanding that would come about. So that's what it spoke to me. You talk about the silence and the grayness, For me, there was something reverent happening, and it's something that could lead to transformation. And that's what we're hoping for. We're still hoping. We're fully aware that reconciliation will take a long time. It's not going to be soon. We were reminded that by Murray Sinclair, who said it's like climbing up the Rockies mountains, and it's going to be a big challenge for reconciliation to truly happen in Canada. And unfortunately, his words are proving pretty prophetic and true. So it's a long time that we're going to experience, but it began in some ways with the Pope's visit. We needed to hear the Pope. Native people needed to hear the leader of the church say, I'm here, I'm here for penance. I came here to do penance. And I want you to know that I am sorry for what took place among all those children that suffered in those schools.
It's interesting to hear you say that. I think so. Now we've lost the Pope, but we also lost Murray Sinclair. You know, this great titan in this country who led so many people heart first, always. And now that they're gone, and now that climb up the Rockies, as you put it, has begun, and some people look away from that. Is the climbing continuing? What is your sense of how the work of Pope Francis that he started when he came in terms of reconciliation and the work the heavy lifting of that work that has been done by people like Murray Sinclair and all of the communities? What's your hope for how that work continues?
Okay, so first of all, I don't want to say that the work only began when Pope came.
Correct.
When the Pope came. It had been in process for a long time, that's what the TRC was, an element of the work of working towards reconciliation. Former Native chiefs, Indigenous leaders, had struggled to bring about the Truth or Reconciliation Commission. That was a step along the path. When the Pope came, it was a call to the 94 calls to action. One of them was bringing the Pope here, and he came. And it continues this flow of reconciliation. We still have a long ways to go because people are not educated. They don't know what really happened. I've heard about, I am aware of conspiracy theories, for instance, that say, oh, it wasn't all that bad. What are they complaining about? So there's the need for education, the need to people to be open to what really happened. So education is necessary, but more than that, I agree with the Pope. Encounters with people are most important. That's where transformation comes. When people come together and they begin to explain, this is what I feel, this is how I experienced it, and others who can listen to that, that's when transformation comes. That's going to take a long time.
Indeed.
To experience these kinds of encounters. The Pope wanted to create a culture of encounter where people got to meet, hear one another, and become sympathetic to one another, feeling, and then that's when growth happens. That's when growth really happens, with this transformation of encounter.
Indeed, and as you were speaking there, sir, we were playing some pictures, Father, of the Pope in Iqaluit. Certainly, I believe, I recognize that as the Pope Mobile was in Edmonton on that sunny day as he was heading into that stadium to continue. The encounters seem to matter so much to him, those one-on-one encounters. I would dare say that he put those above other interactions that he had, encounters with everyday people. Father Daryold Corbiere Winkler, you're very kind for spending time with us. You joined us from Ottawa. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Miigwech.